So I think starting there with the identity is obviously the key. But then there are two other things that I feel like are what actually bring it into practice. And that's that you write about very well. And that's first off is your environment, that you make your environment conducive to better habits, but then also the systems you build around those, your environment and your identity. I'm curious, can you talk a little bit about environment, how that affects your habits, and then as well as systems and how that affects your habits?
Sure. Well, we're in environments all the time. Like you cannot be a person outside of an environment. You're always in some context. And we are responding to that context. We're behaving in some way. We're shaped by the environments that we're in. So, the most obvious way that this happens is that the cues and the stimuli that are in the environment, they prompt you to perform a particular behavior. They remind you of something. The question that I like to ask sometimes is like, what is this space? What behavior does this space encourage? What is
Mm,
this space designed to encourage? And you can see this in many different ways with your behaviors. A lot of people feel like they watch too much television, for example. But walk into any living room. Where do all the couches and chairs face? It's like, what is this room designed to get you to
mhm,
do? And I'm not saying you need to rearrange your entire house, but there's a spectrum of choices. Like you could take the TV and put it inside a wall unit or a cabinet, so it's behind doors. You're less likely to see it. You could take the remote control, put it in a drawer, and put a book in its place. Or you could take a chair and turn it away from the TV, have it
mhm,
face an end table with a book on it or something like that. And individually, none of those choices are going to change your behavior very much. But collectively, you can start to imagine if you make a dozen or 2 dozen or 50 of these little tweaks and changes, and the spaces where you live and work, your living room, your office, your kitchen, these spaces are designed to make the good habits like the path of least resistance. They're
mhm,
designed to make the good habits the easy and the obvious thing. Well, shoot, suddenly it becomes a lot easier to make those choices to act in that way when it's the path of least resistance.
mm,
And I was talking to a guy the other day, and he brought up this interesting point about how with babies and with young children, with toddlers, we do this all the time. We set up gates so they won't fall down the stairs, or we try to baby proof the house and we make sure sharp objects are not where they can reach. And we put covers on the outlets so they can't stick their fingers in them. Like we're basically trying to set the environment up for success. We're trying to set the kid up for success. Let's not
mhm.
put them in a situation where they're likely to fail. And it's so obvious when we talk about doing it with babies, and yet we don't do it with ourselves very often. It's
Right.
like, how can you stack the deck in your favor? How can you design an environment that is one where you don't need a lot of willpower, or
Mhm.
one where you're not fighting against the friction of all these competing stimuli? So, the more that you can do that, I think the easier it becomes to stick to better habits. And ultimately, that's one of the most overlooked drivers of your habits and behavior, which is the shape of the physical environment and the things that are surrounding you.
For sure. I always like to say willpower is a bad plan.
Mm,
It's not a plan, really. It's an assumption, and I think we turn older and we're like, "Yeah, I could totally not watch TV," but it's like if all the environment is directing you to do this one action, you're not setting yourself up for success. And I do think it gets really small. Like, I think for me, one habit I've tried to build over the years is an exercise fitness routine, and I found that where I live, we live in Manhattan, and so but anytime we look around, we were looking for a new apartment. I made it a point to say, "Is there a gym close by that's within
mm.
walking distance?" Because I found that if it's not within a 3 block walking distance of where I live, I'm not going. And so that was like a huge, and it's totally changed it for me. It's made it like
Yeah.
the barriers dropped
I
dramatically.
think there's actually a study that found that for people who, if they are intending to work out before or after work, if the gym was on the path of their commute, then they were much more likely to work out, even if it was just a block out of the way, but they felt
Exactly.
like they were going the wrong way to get home, they were
Mhm.
less likely to go.
That's how it
And,
started. Yeah.
there are many different versions of that where you just try to make the good habit the path of least resistance. And conversely, you try to add friction between you and the bad behaviors. So, two examples for me personally, I don't do it every day, but I do it a lot. I will try to leave my phone in another room until lunch each day.
Mhm.
And whenever I do that, I almost invariably have a better, more productive morning. Because if my phone's next to me, I'm like everybody else. I'll check it every 3 seconds. But if it's in another room, Like I have a home office, so it's only like 45 seconds away, but I
Mhm.
never go get it. And like, isn't that interesting? It's like, did I want it or not? Like
Right.
in the one sense, I wanted it bad enough to check it every 3 seconds when it was next to me, but I
Sure.
never wanted it so bad that I
Right.
would go and put 45 seconds in of work to go get it.
Uh-huh.
So you'd be surprised how often undesirable behaviors can kind of curtail themselves to the desired degree if you just
Mhm.
have a little bit of friction between you and that action.